Imagine standing in the heart of a silent jungle where colossal stone towers pierce through the canopy, their faces carved with ancient smiles that have watched 1,000 years pass. Now picture this. These ruins you're seeing were once part of the largest city on Earth, bigger than medieval Paris, bigger than London, and built by a civilization so advanced that modern scientists needed lasers from the sky just to rediscover its scale. How did a medieval Southeast Asian kingdom build engineering marvels that rival Rome and control an empire that shaped an entire region, only to disappear so completely that the world forgot they ever existed? And more importantly, what secret power allowed them to rise from scattered jungle chiefdoms into one of history's greatest superpowers? Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand how the Khmer Empire mastered a force more powerful than armies, more valuable than gold, and more essential than any weapon: the control of water itself. The Khmer Empire doesn't start like the empires you're used to hearing about. There were no vast deserts like Egypt, no monumental walls like China, no Mediterranean crossroads like Rome. Instead, this empire emerged from dense monsoon jungles and unpredictable rivers. Yet from this wild landscape, they rose to dominate trade, culture, religion, and warfare across mainland Southeast Asia for over 6 centuries. Today, most of the world knows only one piece of their legacy, Angkor Wat. But that temple is only a tiny fragment of a civilization whose cities sprawled for miles, whose kings reshaped geography itself, and whose engineers solved problems modern planners still struggle with. The story you're about to hear isn't just about a forgotten empire, it's about human ambition on a scale almost impossible to imagine. This is the rise of a kingdom that turned water into power, nature into architecture, and belief into monumental stone. And it's also the story of how even the greatest systems, once stretched too far, can collapse in silence. Let's step into the world of the Khmer, an empire that built miracles, wielded unimaginable influence, and then vanished into the shadows of the very jungle it conquered. The rise of a jungle superpower. The story of the Khmer Empire begins not with glory, but with fragmentation. Small kingdoms, rival chiefdoms, and shifting alliances scattered across the floodplains of mainland Southeast Asia. For centuries, no single power dominated the region. The land was rich but unpredictable, shaped by monsoons, dense forests, and rivers that could either nourish or destroy. Into this turbulent landscape stepped a figure who would reshape history, Jayavarman II. In the year 802 CE, on Phnom Kalen, a mountain surrounded by jungle, he declared himself Chakravartin, a universal monarch. It wasn't just a political statement, it was a spiritual consolidation, one that bound his authority to divine legitimacy. This moment marked the birth of the Khmer Empire. From that point, everything changed. Instead of dozens of competing rulers, the region now rallied around a centralized power. Jayavarman II and his successors understood something crucial. To rule the land, you had to control water, mobility, and belief. The geography of the region worked to their advantage. The Tonle Sap Lake, one of the most productive freshwater ecosystems on Earth, created fertile lands that could feed enormous populations. When the lake expanded in the monsoon season and receded during the dry months, it made the soil ideal for rice farming. Early Khmer rulers recognized the potential. They began to build canals, dikes, and reservoirs to stabilize food supply and control floods, allowing settlements to grow without fear of famine. At the same time, the Khmer strategically positioned themselves along trade networks, linking India, China, and the rest of Southeast Asia. Goods, ideas, and craftsmen flowed through their territory. Hindu cosmology, Sanskrit inscriptions, and architectural techniques merged with local traditions to create something uniquely Khmer. As the empire grew, so did its ambition. The early kings built temples not just as places of worship, but as symbols of authority, giant reminders that the king was the earthly representation of divine power. By the end of the 9th century, the Khmer were no longer a cluster of tribes. They were a rising superpower, armed with visionary leadership, fertile lands, and a sense of cosmic purpose. The foundations had been laid for what would become one of the most extraordinary civilizations the world has ever seen.
The hidden technology behind Khmer power. If you want to understand the true engine behind Khmer greatness, you won't find it in their armies or even their temples. You'll find it in something far more basic, but infinitely more powerful: their mastery of water. The Khmer Empire created one of the most advanced hydraulic engineering systems in the pre-modern world, a network so vast and complex that modern scientists needed airborne LiDAR lasers to uncover its full scale. When researchers scanned the Cambodian jungle from above, they discovered something astonishing. Grid-like city layouts, canals, embankments, reservoirs, and engineered landscapes stretching far beyond the famous temples. This hydraulic city system wasn't just impressive, it was revolutionary. The Khmer learned how to tame the chaotic monsoon climate by building enormous reservoirs called barays. These weren't small ponds. They were monumental feats of engineering, some stretching over 8 kilometers. They acted as water banks, storing excess rain during the wet season and releasing it during the dry months. This allowed farmers to grow rice year-round, producing harvests far beyond what most medieval societies could imagine. With stable food supplies came population booms, specialized labor, and the growth of gigantic urban centers. And this is where their brilliance becomes even more apparent. The water system wasn't just functional, it was symbolic. The barays and canals often aligned with temple complexes, reinforcing the idea that the king maintained cosmic harmony by controlling the flow of water. Agriculture, spirituality, and engineering became intertwined in a single system that kept the empire prosperous for centuries. The roads and bridges the Khmer built also reveal a high degree of organization. Stone causeways, rest houses, and administrative stations allowed efficient movement across the empire, something rare in medieval Southeast Asia. Goods and information traveled quickly, making the state more cohesive and centralized. What modern researchers find truly remarkable is how little of this was visible for centuries. When the jungle reclaimed the land, it erased the surface structures, but left behind faint traces, detectable only through technology. And those traces tell a clear story. The Khmer didn't just build cities, they engineered entire landscapes. Their true superpower wasn't just their temples, or their armies, or their wealth. It was their ability to bend nature to their will and transform a monsoon-flooded environment into a stable, thriving civilization. This mastery of water would fuel their golden age and eventually become the system that strained under its own complexity. The End Dash. The Golden Age. Angkor at its peak. The Golden Age of the Khmer Empire is one of the most breathtaking chapters in world history. At its height, Angkor wasn't just a city, it was the beating heart of a superpower, a metropolis larger and more complex than any city on the planet at the time. Imagine miles of perfectly aligned temples, wide boulevards and canals reflecting the sky like mirrors. Imagine tens of thousands of workers carving sandstone blocks, priests chanting in sacred courtyards, merchants arriving with goods from distant lands, and the king standing as the divine link between heaven and earth. This era begins with Jayavarman II, whose most iconic achievement is Angkor Wat. But describing Angkor Wat as a temple is an understatement. It's the world's largest religious monument, an architectural masterpiece that blends mathematical precision with spiritual symbolism. Its towers represent the peaks of Mount Meru, the mythical center of the universe. Its galleries, filled with epic bas-reliefs, narrate stories from the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and Khmer history. And every stone seems to whisper the same message. The king's power is eternal, his kingdom divinely sanctioned. After Jayavarman's reign came Jayavarman VII, perhaps the most ambitious and transformative ruler in Khmer history. He built Angkor Thom, the Great Walled City, and the Bayon Temple with its serene stone faces smiling in every direction. He constructed a massive road network, rest houses for travelers, and even hospitals, a rare sign of state-sponsored welfare in the medieval world. Under his leadership, the empire expanded its military dominance, influencing or controlling territories in modern-day Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, and beyond. The Angkor region bustled with activity. Specialists crafted fine ceramics and sculptures. Vast pools and barrays shimmered under the sun, feeding rice fields that stretched toward the horizon. Diplomatic ties reached India and China, bringing wealth, monks, artisans, and new ideas. The Khmer achieved a level of urbanization, engineering, and administration unmatched in the region. But with all of this greatness came a hidden pressure brewing beneath the surface. The vast hydraulic system needed constant maintenance. Population growth demanded more production. Monsoon patterns fluctuated. The empire's strength was immense, but so was its dependency on delicate systems. As the Golden Age dazzled with its brilliance, the first shadows of strain were slowly forming, a reminder that even the mightiest civilizations are never immune to change. The fall, collapse of a superpower. The fall of the Khmer Empire is not a simple story of defeat. It's a complex unraveling of systems, decisions, and forces, both human and environmental. Unlike Rome, which faced centuries of invasions, or the Maya, who saw cities suddenly abandoned, the Khmer collapse was gradual, layered, and deeply intertwined with their strengths. At the heart of the decline was the very thing that powered their rise, the water system. For centuries, the Khmer had mastered the monsoons, using their reservoirs and canals to buffer against seasonal extremes. But climate records show that between the 13th and 15th centuries, Southeast Asia experienced severe swings, years of harsh drought followed by intense floods. These extremes overwhelmed the delicate hydraulic network. Canals silted up, dikes burst, reservoirs cracked. The system needed constant repairs, but as political instability grew, maintenance lagged behind the damage. Meanwhile, external pressures mounted. The kingdom of Ayutthaya, emerging in nearby Thailand, rose as a powerful rival. Conflict between the two states intensified. While the Khmer had long dominated the region, their military advantage eroded as Ayutthaya asserted itself. Historical records suggest several invasions and counterattacks over the centuries, each one straining the capital further. Internally, shifts in religion and leadership styles also played a role. The empire had moved from Hinduism to Mahayana Buddhism and later toward Theravada Buddhism. These transitions reshaped the political and spiritual foundations on which kingship rested. The king's divine authority weakened, making the centralized state less stable. And then, slowly but unmistakably, Angkor began to empty. Not in a sudden exodus, but in a gradual relocation of power. As the water system faltered and warfare increased, rulers shifted their focus southward toward the more manageable and strategically located city of Phnom Penh, closer to the Mekong's trade routes. Angkor, once the largest city on earth, was left to the jungle.
By the 15th century, the Khmer Empire was no longer the superpower it once had been. The forests reclaimed the land, vines wrapping around the silent temples. What remained were the stone monuments, grand, haunting, and enduring reminders of a civilization that mastered nature, built miracles, and then vanished into the green silence of time. And even today, Angkor's ruins whisper the same warning. When the systems holding a society together break, even the greatest empires can fade without a sound.